Live from New York, this is the Harvey Hour. My name is Stephen Harvey. It's great to have you in on a Tuesday. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. How are you doing today on this Tuesday?
This is our 200th show, Nate.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It doesn't seem like 200.
I want to tell you, I've enjoyed every one. It's great doing the show with you, and I'm glad I'm a co-host.
Still remember we were recapping the wild card games where it was what was it, the wild card? It was not the Falcons, the Buccaneers. Nope, not the Bucs didn't make it that year. It was the Bengals, Tennessee Titans, and it was that set. The Bengals, I think the Bengals versus the Raiders that weekend as well. I don't know. It was a very, very long time ago that we started doing these live shows. Or actually, we used to record shows. We did it live, or we started live last summer. So it's been a very, very long time. But yeah, 200 shows. It does not feel like 200 shows. I'm going to be.
That was the first show we did live. Was that one in the wild card?
No, that was the first show we did together. Because I did one half show to start it off when I made the transition from the show where it used to be called Fast Break into what it is now, which is the Harvey Hour. So it's been a very, very long time, but yeah, no, it's been a good 200 shows so far. Let's continue to produce thrilling content as everybody loves our analysis so much.
We do our best.
We have a lot of really, really good topics. It's a very, very quarterback-centric show. A lot's going on, but let's start with the breaking news that broke last night, which is Russell Wilson is out as the Denver Broncos quarterback at the start of the NFL new year, which is March 13th. Russell Wilson will no longer be the starting quarterback of the Denver Broncos. He is currently going to incur for the Broncos the largest cap hit in NFL history at $85 million. And if you break that down individually over the next 2 seasons, he will hold the number 1 and number 4 highest cap hits in NFL history for a single season. This is absolutely insane when it comes to the fact that they traded so much to get him and the lack of production, and where we're here now with Russell Wilson no longer the starting quarterback of the Denver Broncos. I want to know, how surprised are you that the Broncos would move off of Russell Wilson so soon into his Broncos tenure?
I'm not that surprised given what happened at the end of the season this past year when he was benched for the last 2 games of the season. It was just like Derek Carr. It's the same, almost a complete replay of what happened to him. He had that $37 million injury guarantee that would kick in if he got hurt in the next year. And Russell Wilson had the same thing. I'm surprised that teams, negotiate. They allow that to be in a contract because the risk was if he got hurt in the last 2 games, he'd pick up that guarantee, and that would really hurt them. So, Sean Payton, they never clicked. I don't think there was any chemistry between the two of them. Sean Payton constantly criticizing Russell Wilson in public, yelling at him on the sidelines. I don't think he ever bought into Russell Wilson. I think he was very negative to him right from the beginning, seeing that Russell had, his own office and had a lot of perks that really weren't very team-oriented. I think that rubbed Sean Payton the wrong way. I think that, a $245 million contract, the Broncos are going to eat $39 million this year, avoid $37 million guarantee that they would have had to pay him at the first and middle of this month. And they gave up. Seattle was the big winner in this one. They got 2022. They got a first, second, and a 5th round pick. 2023, a first, second, and Noah Fant, who's a good tight end. Shelby Harris and Drew Lock as a backup quarterback. So Seattle's a big winner in this deal.
I would definitely say so. And when it comes to the future of Russell Wilson, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Russell Wilson's not a Hall of Famer. And this is a huge ding to his legacy. If anyone thought he was a Hall of Famer, I think this tenure with the Broncos shows that he probably won't make it to the Hall of Fame. I looked at the numbers in his Seattle years. There was 1 year where he was above average in pass attempts. Most of the time, he was bottom 3, if not dead last, when he was with Seattle. it was mainly a run game with a really, really good defense. He got carried by the Legion of Boom, carried by Marshawn Lynch, and when it was let Russ cook, it imploded. And by the way, there wasn't even much cooking going on when it was really all up to Russ, strictly because, once again, the amount of pass attempts he had was not equivalent to maybe a team depending on throwing the football. In my opinion, Russ was never a Hall of Famer even in Seattle. I know he's a 9-time Pro Bowler and he won a Super Bowl, but if you take a look at that, look at what kind of an era he was in Seattle. Marshawn Lynch, who he should have handed the ball off to on the 1-yard line against New England. Instead, it was all up to Russ, and he threw the game away literally when Marshawn Lynch, guarantee you, he would have ran that ball in and scored a touchdown, probably not giving the Patriots that 2014 Super Bowl. But Russell Wilson, in this season, you're going to say, well, Russ played really well. Because if you look at the numbers, the 66% completion percentage and the 26 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, I think Russ was playing it safe. And I'm going to bring up the numbers comparatively to his previous season and the 2022 season. And these are the numbers. Russ played it safe. The numbers look good. The numbers look really good when you compare it to 2022. The record 4-11 in 2022 compared to 7-8 this past season. 60% completion percentage to 66, 234 to 204. So there's about a 40-yard dip in passing yards per game. Touchdown to interception ratio, 16 touchdowns, 11 picks in 2022 to 26 touchdowns, 8 picks in 2023. A significantly better touchdown interception ratio. And then the passer rating is 14 points higher, basically at 84.4 to 98. And why do I say that these numbers are not what they actually appear to be? Because the numbers I don't have up here are his average depth of target. How far is he throwing the ball to his receivers? In 2022, he was ranked 7th in the league. This past season, 27th in the league. So he's dinking and dunking a lot more this past season. What about deep throw percentage? Remember how Russell Wilson was notorious for rolling outside the pocket and sending bombs to Doug Baldwin or whoever else. DK Metcalf had a couple, beautiful deep shots. His deep throw percentage in his first year with Denver was 3rd in the league. This past season, it was 17th. So he's dinking and dunking a lot more and preserving the touchdown to interception ratio. So to me, this is a massive, ding on Russell Wilson's career. I think, I'm not going to say he played horribly because he really didn't. He didn't play terribly, but he didn't play good enough to win more games. He is no longer this game changer that I think the Broncos were hoping he'd be. By the way, just to begin with, Russell Wilson wasn't even option A. He was option B after they signed Nathaniel Hackett to be their head coach in order to try to go out and get Aaron Rodgers. Well, that fell flat on its face. So they had to settle with Russell Wilson, and they gave up so much for it. And honestly, that's probably the worst trade in NFL history because it didn't amount to anything. All it amounted to was more embarrassment, Russell Wilson's career taking a massive ding, and that's where we're at now. And what I think the future holds for Russ, and it's not pretty in my opinion. Because right now, what we got for potential quarterback replacements are, we still have Atlanta. We still have Pittsburgh. They're still trying to find open competition, supposedly. You also got the Raiders, who I don't think Aiden O'Connell is going to be their guy of the future. Who else you have? You have the Raiders, you have the Steelers, you have the Falcons, you have the Vikings, who are still trying to get Kirk Cousins. There's not many places that are going to be out getting a quarterback that are in a bad enough position to not draft the top one. That's the big one. Because you have the Steelers, who are just looking for competition for Kenny Pickett. They are 20th in the draft. You have the Vikings, who I believe are 12th. I believe they're somewhere around in near the top 10. You have the Raiders, who are 13th, so they could either get a J.J. McCarthy, who supposedly is going to try to climb Jaden Daniels in the draft. I don't understand that whatsoever. But yeah, there's not many options for Russell Wilson to go to. Right now, currently, the Steelers are the favorites. But it's not looking good for us. So his future could be in jeopardy.
Where do you think he'll wind up?
Truthfully, just because he's not making a lot of money, I think he'd be perfectly content with sitting on his couch for one season or for 2 seasons, because the amount of money he's going to be, at least this season, I should say, because the amount of money he's making like $37 million for doing absolutely nothing. But, supposedly what's going to happen is he's going to take a minimum salary, a veteran minimum, which is $1.21 million. So if he could take that and go somewhere, I still think Atlanta's the good option if he wants to succeed. And like he said on I Am Athlete podcast, if he still wants to go out and win 2 Super Bowls in 5 years, Atlanta's his best shot to at least get back in the playoffs. because they are in the worst division in football. And the Panthers are still probably going to be terrible. The Falcons should be better. You're going to be the quarterback there in my prediction. The Bucs, who knows what's going to happen with them with another year if they sign Baker back. There's a lot of question marks for that entire division. The Saints, they were extremely underwhelming this season. So if I were Russ, I'd go to the Falcons.
Don't you think there'd be quite a bit of interest in him if he was out there at $1.2 million? If you could have him for $1.2 million, don't you think there'd be more interest for him?
Well, it would be a one-year deal. You're hoping it works.
He's a backup. They could bring him in as a backup.
Well, why would you do that, though? He's a known starter in the league. He can still play at a starter position. So okay, if you bring him as a backup, where does he go?
Well, I'm not saying that that he would wind up the backup, but you bring him in to compete for the job.
So you're saying then the Steelers thing, because that's the only is the only team that is looking for quarterback competition. Because I guarantee you, if you bring in Russ, if you're the Raiders,
don't have a top pick
you're going to start the Broncos.
No, the Pittsburgh doesn't have a top pick.
The 20th pick in the draft.
Yeah, so this would be a route for them to go, and that would give Kenny Pickett and who's the other guy?
Well, the other two quarterbacks are gone. Mitch Trubisky's gone. Mason Rudolph's gone.
Mason Rudolph is gone.
Yeah, he's no longer under contract.
Oh, well, that doesn't mean they might not sign.
Well, if you sign Russ, you don't need to sign him back.
True. So I think that's probably the likely. If you can have him for next to nothing, then I think he goes there. I almost think maybe the Patriots would be interested in.
No, I wouldn't.
$1.2 million. Then they could let Russell Wilson and Mac Jones fight it out if they don't.
Well,
if they're
draft a quarterback.
But if they're at number 3 and both Jalen Daniels and Caleb Williams are gone, then I think the Patriots should take Marvin Harrison Jr.
Well,
and that would mean that it's either Mac Jones or somebody else. I don't think it's Bailey Zappi. I doubt he'll make the team, but it could be Russell Wilson if you could pick him up for next to nothing.
I wouldn't bring him in. Just period. Yeah, I know that's probably not a great.
I think he lands somewhere at $1.2 million for sure. He'll be somewhere, and he'll be given an opportunity to compete for the starting quarterback job.
If I'm Russ, why go to a tough division?
Huh?
If I'm Russ, why am I going to a tough division? I got to play the Bills twice, and the Dolphins twice, and the Jets defense twice.
Well, you don't have any other choices.
You have 4 choices that are better chances. Maybe not the AFC West with the Raiders, but. Truthfully, there's not many good teams that are looking for a quarterback like Russ. They want other young talent or talent that's actually, potentially great, like one of those top picks. If I'm Russ, I'm going to the Falcons. If the Falcons are interested in me, which we're going to talk about later,
I think the Falcons have more interest in somebody else.
Right, but I think if you could gauge their interest to see if they're willing to take you at such a low price instead of spending money on, let's say, Justin Fields' $25 million fifth-year option. Or if you're paying for someone like Kirk Cousins at $35 to $40 million a year, I haven't heard they're interested in Baker, but Baker's asking for top dollar too. He's not willing to take a hometown discount for the Bucs. So, I mean, if I could spend $1.2 million for 1 year, I might draft a quarterback while I'm at it as well. I already have a pretty decent offensive core. My defense could use a little bit of improvement. But Russ actually to the Falcons makes a lot of sense because his success in Seattle was built on a great run game. You have Bijan Robinson. You also have Kyle Pitts. You have Drake London. You have a pretty good offensive line. So the offense is tailored around what Russell Wilson had a lot of success with. A great run game, a pretty good offensive line, and then the defense still needs a little bit of improvement, but you could build that in the draft if you want and you don't even need to sign to a 1 year, $1.2 million deal. You can get him at a low 20s for 2-3 years. If you want to, keep him on the cheap and maybe say, he could be our starter for the future to come.
I think you pick him up for a song and see what happens. Give him a chance to compete, and maybe he wins the starting job. Maybe he doesn't on one of these teams that has a shaky quarterback situation.
Well, that's really the Steelers. They're the only one saying that we're looking for competition for our starting quarterback. The Raiders, they're looking for a quarterback. The Falcons, they're looking for a quarterback. The Bears are going to draft a quarterback. There's not many teams that are like, we'll bring him in and there's a chance. It's not like a Mac Jones, Cam Newton situation where you're bringing in a quarterback and seeing who wins in the offseason. You're going there to really be a starter if I'm Russ. So for me, it is the Atlanta Falcons if he wants to try to even get close to his 2 Super Bowls in 5 years. But speaking about the Falcons, so reportedly, there's a lot of stuff going on between these couple teams. But yeah, the Falcons supposedly are interested in Kirk Cousins, and Kirk Cousins is also interested in signing with the Atlanta Falcons. According to Mike Florio, it looks like Kirk Cousins is leaning towards signing with Atlanta and stepping away from the Minnesota Vikings. Now, the reason that there's such heavy speculation is because Kirk Cousins' wife, Julie, her parents are from Georgia. She grew up in Georgia. At the end of Kirk Cousins' career, he might want to go settle down in Georgia with his wife, who's near her family. But the Vikings are still trying very, very hard. But the Falcons have pivoted from Justin Fields over to Kirk Cousins. So I want to know, would this be a good move for the Falcons to pursue and then potentially sign Kirk Cousins? And is it smart for Kirk Cousins in his current situation in his career to sign with Atlanta?
Did you know that Kirk Cousins is the 4th highest paid NFL player in history? The contracts that
a lot of guaranteed money he's had. I'm pretty sure he hasn't had an unguaranteed contract in his career.
He's done amazing. With this next contract, he will have grossed over $300 million in contracts.
That's crazy. That
and
is
the guy
crazy.
has never gotten deep in the playoffs, right? Never gotten deep in the playoffs, never been to the Super Bowl, never played really that well in a playoff game. I don't think he's ever had.
He got cooked by Daniel Jones.
Yeah, he got beat by Daniel Jones. So he's done very well for himself. He's done okay for the Minnesota Vikings, but he had Justin Jefferson out there catching the ball, so that helped him an awful lot. He's old, 35 years old. Didn't the Atlanta Falcons just get off of Matt Ryan, who was old and aging and immobile? And they're going to go with a quarterback that's kind of similar, who just had a catastrophic Achilles tendon tear. So I think it's risky to go for Kirk Cousins. I think your argument for Russell Wilson actually has almost convinced me. I think that might be a better, lower cost option. I think he could go that route, and I think they think that Kirk Cousins could take him to the promised land, and they're prepared. I understand they're prepared to give him a very big contract, and that he and his family are down there looking around in Atlanta. So I think that's going to be a problem for the Vikings, who would love to have him back. And I think in the end, it might be a problem for Atlanta, because it looks to me like they're headed back to somebody similar to what they had before in Matt Ryan, immobile and old.
That very well could be the case. And if I'm Kirk Cousins, and I'm at this stage of my career where I'm not saying he's near retirement, but he's one step closer to out of the door than he is fully inside of the door. Why would I go to a team that albeit isn't a bad division, but why would I go to a team that isn't any closer to a Super Bowl, or actually, truthfully, it's farther away to a Super Bowl than the Minnesota Vikings are? Justin Jefferson versus Drake London, who do you take? Running situation, Bijan Robinson over, they just got rid of Alexander Madison, but I'll give you Bijan. Who would you rather have, Kyle Pitts or TJ Hawkinson? For me, might be a hot take for some of you, I'd choose Hawkinson. Defense, both are not great, but you could argue that the Atlanta defense is comparable. Last season, they were 11th, while Minnesota's was pretty much, it was mid. It was 16th in the league. So you could argue which defense you want. For me, it's not a full wash, but you could argue, it's not that big of a difference. But if I'm Kirk Cousins, I'm on offense. I have TJ Hawkinson. I have Justin Jefferson, who he's still trying to figure out a contract extension. I'd stick with Minnesota. I would
they also have the rookie that they had, Addison.
Yeah, they also have Jordan Addison as well.
He played very well too.
So for me, if I'm Kirk, I understand your wife's family's in Georgia. You're towards the end of your career. Nice to settle down in an area where, it's very homely. Your in-laws are in Georgia. But if I'm looking for Kirk Cousins to have success, long-term success for however long his career ends up being, I'm sticking with Minnesota. Now, the weather, when you get up there, you don't want to be in the freezing cold Minnesota weather.
They play indoors.
Right. But you're talking about Minnesota, Atlanta. What has more?
The Atlanta plays indoors as well.
I'm talking about in the area. in the air is surrounded. Like for instance, Damian Lillard.
Atlanta.
Damian Lillard hates Milwaukee because there's nothing to do. He wants to be in Miami where there's so much to do. If you're Kirk Cousins, you're going out. I mean, he has a strong personality, and we've seen it over the past couple seasons. So maybe the Atlanta area is more appropriate for his type of personality.
Well, if his wife's family's there, then she's begging him to go back there. And I would guess.
Normally athletes follow their family.
Yeah,
so
and mostly athletes go for the big money too. They have no loyalty. They go where they're going to get paid the highest, right? And so I would say he's going to take the biggest paycheck that he can get, and he's done very well with that over the past. This is going to gross him over his career. He'll pass $300 million, fourth in the NFL history. And player pay. It's amazing. I mean, would you think Kirk Cousins would be number 4 on the list?
No, he's definitely
not at all.
He hasn't played to scream that he's made the 4th most money in the league.
That's for sure. That's an understatement.
And if I'm the Falcons, do I want to sign a guy who notoriously outside of 1 p.m. games chokes very hard, and then in playoff game, which depending on how this division looks. You may win the division if you sign Kirk Cousins, but in the playoffs, you'll be playing with teams like Dallas, like Philly, like Detroit, maybe like Green Bay, like San Francisco, maybe the Rams. Against those teams is Kirk Cousins, or even for the sake of argument, Russell Wilson, or either one of those quarterbacks. I would honestly choose Russ over Kirk Cousins because I don't think Russ will choke as hard, or doesn't have the reputation of choking in big-time games.
Well, he has at least won 1 Super Bowl.
And was very close to winning 2.
That's for sure. Yeah.
On the goal line, about to win his 2nd Super Bowl.
Through an interception.
Right. Now...
play, it wasn't his play call, by the way. That was the sidelines play call. He didn't call that play.
He could audible. So. He could read the line and say, oh, yeah, they're but then again, you probably don't expect them to play pass defense, but...
Well, I think whichever quarterback they pick, it will be better than Desmond Ridder, Marcus Mariota, or Taylor Heineke, and those are the 3 that they've had over the past 2 years.
100% true. Because both those quarterbacks have been to the playoffs, have had success in the NFL. Desmond Ridder is a complete bust. The only question is, though, you have the 8th pick. Are you more invested in, let's say, J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, or Michael Penix than you are in Kirk Cousins or Russell Wilson?
I don't think so.
They're cheaper than both. Unless Russ legitimately takes the veteran minimum, they would be cheaper. You'd have them for longer.
Yeah, but I think Atlanta thinks that they're close to making.
I'm sure they do.
Run, and they think they're just a quarterback away, right? Because with the quarterback play,
playoffs.
The quarterback play is what really kept them out of the playoffs this year, right?
So you're saying closer to playoffs than you are to
making huge mistakes, games that they could have won. They definitely could have won 2 or 3 more games if they hadn't had the mistakes the quarterbacks made. So they think they're close to being able to make the playoffs. Making the Super Bowl, I don't know. I think that's a stretch for that team. But making the playoffs, it's doable with a better quarterback. They would have made it last year if they'd had Baker Mayfield. And he played for them like he played for the Bucs, they would have made the playoffs. They would have won the division, right? They did win 7 games. So I think they're close. I don't think they may draft a quarterback anyway, right? They have the 8th pick. They could get maybe J.J. McCarthy. He might be there at 8. So I think they will take a veteran, and it's probably either Cousins or Russell Wilson, and I bet you it's Cousins. I'll wager that right now with you, Nate. I'll put $1 on that. How's that?
So
I think it's going to be Kirk Cousins, and I bet you it happens like either day 1 or day 2 of free agency.
Wow. If I'm Russ, I'm campaigning for Atlanta. If I do want to live up to my 2 Super Bowls in 5 years, I don't think he could carry the Falcons to a Super Bowl, but will the defense step up more consistently? Will Bijan Robinson get enough carries, which he didn't do last season?
Who's Atlanta's best wide receiver?
Drake London.
Yeah.
And then you have Kyle Pitts as
do you think the offensive weapons, the skill players in Atlanta are better than the ones in the Broncos?
Yeah.
Bijan Robinson.
Better running back, better tight end. I would say better offensive line, obviously.
Yeah.
Is Drake London better than Cortland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy? Yeah, I think it's close. I do think it's close. I think with Russell Wilson, we could see a separation between, what Drake London can do with a actual, decent quarterback than Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton did this past season. But what's scary is that for the Broncos, at least, Jarrett Stidham is the favorite to be a starting quarterback next season for him.
I don't think they're going to win many games with that.
No, they're not. And I wouldn't expect them to, because they're not a type of team that's going to win with lesser quarterback play, because they're not built that way. The Falcons, on the other hand,
I mean, what do you think the Broncos
still won 7 games with bad quarterbacks?
So they think that it's going to be Stidham to be the starter?
That's the betting favorite. I don't necessarily agree with that.
Who else?
Personally,
who would they look at? Who do you think they might look at if they didn't think Stidham?
The Broncos?
Yeah.
Draft a quarterback.
Where are they drafting? What
they're within the top 15. I don't have the draft order in front of me. I could look it up quickly, but if I'm the Broncos, I'm drafting a quarterback. For me, the Broncos are 12th. Oh, so I was right first. Yeah. Let's take a break. But coming up, we're talking Diana Rossini. The Justin Fields thing is a crazy situation. Originally, 4 teams are invested. Now almost no teams are invested. And, quote, Justin Fields' market is soft for now. Bears fans are not going to love hearing that, or Justin Fields fans aren't going to love hearing that. And also, as smart people said, the Giants are done with Daniel Jones, supposedly, according to Rich Eisen. We'll talk about that right after this.
Whether you're just discovering your voice or taking your show to the next level, you know what the world needs to hear. All you have to do is say it. With Spotify, set up your podcast. Your food podcast. Your mindfulness podcast. Your never thought you'd get this far podcast. And watch those sparks fly.
I put a picture of the comment.
Drop the episode anywhere people listen. And find out who they're cooking with, where they're finding inner balance, and why they love your show. You're already a creator. Now you can create, connect, and get paid for your passion with one single free tool. Spotify for podcasters. Talk where the world listens.
Using Wi-Fi without NordVPN could mean sharing your private stuff with more people than you think. Stay safe on public Wi-Fi. Get NordVPN's special offer and encrypt your internet connection. NordVPN. Online security starts with a click.
Welcome back to the Harvey Hour. My name is Stephen Harvey. It's great to have you in on a Tuesday. This is our 200th show. Thank you for anyone who's ever supported us throughout our endeavors over the past 2 years and through 200 shows, which is crazy. For those 200 shows, I'm joined alongside my co-host and dad, Stephen Harvey. How are you doing today on this Tuesday?
I'm good, and it's great to be here for show number 200.
Yeah,
I've enjoyed every one with you, Nate.
Massive milestone. Let's get into this topic here, because this is probably one of the most confusing topics that we've ever done in a very, very long time. The interest for Justin Fields, and I made the prediction not too long ago, I think he's worth a 3rd-round pick, and that's what a lot of executives, the Athletic interviewed 8 NFL executives, which most said a late 2nd or early 3rd-round pick, or the equivalent. If you're thinking 2nd-round pick, you could do it for the equivalent value of a 3rd and 5th-round pick. But what's interesting is that Justin Fields, who is a great YouTube highlight reel, phenomenal athletic quarterback, runs very, very well. Originally, it was a lot of teams were invested. We have the Steelers, Raiders, Broncos, all these teams. And now it's basically nobody. Really, it's nobody. Diana Rossini said on The Athletic that Justin Fields' market is soft for now, and it was, quote, hard to find strong interest from any team, with one NFC general manager explaining that the problem with the timing of this is when people know you're getting rid of something, they don't pay as much for it. They're making it very obvious they want to move off of Justin Fields. Not a lot of reports thinking that they're going to move off of that 1st-round pick and keep Justin Fields, so it looks like they're moving off, and obviously supply and demand are a massive fact here, but even with the demand for a quarterback high, Justin Fields' value is not looking great. I want to know, first of all, what do you think Justin Fields' value is currently in the current NFL realm, and also, where would he be the best fit?
Okay. Well, I originally said a few weeks back that I thought he could command a 1st-round pick. I'm backing off of that now. I don't think that's the case, because I think that Chicago made a strategic mistake by saying we're anxious to get rid of him, right? So that you're right, that does drop his value. So now I'm thinking potentially it could be had for a second round pick, plus maybe a day 2 or early day 3 second pick. So 2 picks, probably a second, third, or a fourth round to land him, or maybe they trade a starter. Maybe they trade for another team's offensive or defensive starter as compensation. I don't know. We'll see. I think the teams that could be in the mix, there's a lot of them, actually. I think the Steelers, Atlanta, Raiders, Washington, Patriots, but also a dark horse, maybe the Saints. But the Saints wouldn't be giving anywhere near that kind of compensation. They'd have to see that Justin Fields had been shopped around and nobody wanted him, and the draft goes on and nobody's picking him up. Maybe the Bears say, yeah, we just got to get off him. He knows that we want to trade him. We've ruined our chemistry with him. He can't come back here. And they let him go for a lower round draft pick, and the Saints pick him up to make him a backup because Jameis Winston is a free agent, and I'm not sure where he winds up. That might be something we want to talk about here, and where we think Jameis Winston's going to land. But if you look at Justin Fields' history here, if the Saints were a dark horse, his old quarterback coach, Coach Janocko, he coached him for 2 years in Chicago, and the Saints' Chris Olave was Fields' receiver at Ohio State. So there's some familiarity there. The problem is the passing production in those 2 years for the Bears was 32nd in 2022 and 27th in 2023. So I'm not sure he's headed there. He's better on his feet than he is through the air. I mean, he's had 2,200 yards rushing, 14 TDs in 3 seasons. Any running back, that would be, you would say that's pretty good production for a running back. And in 2022, he had over 1,000 yards rushing and 8 TDs. So the problem is through the air. He's only 60% completion, 6,700 yards, 40 TDs, and 30 interceptions in his career. He's still on his rookie contract, so if somebody does trade for him, then they're going to have to decide on the fifth year option pretty quickly. The thing you point out about him is that he gets worse as the game goes on. His fourth quarter production's terrible, and that's got to be a concern for most teams that'll be looking at him. So I do think he'll wind up somewhere. It might not be for anywhere near what the Bears are hoping to get, but I think they have to trade him because now they've telegraphed it to the world that they don't want him anymore.
Yeah, and that's the big thing, because once you know, or once everybody knows you're giving up an asset, they're willing to give you basically baseline for it. They're not going to be, oh, well, do we have to pay more to go get him, because you're just willing to get off him, so there's going to be less demand for him. But I'm going to bring up a number here because I think this number is very, very fascinating. So everyone thinks Justin Fields is this at least decent quarterback that got screwed over by the Bears. However, I mentioned this stat before, in the fourth quarter, when he's trailing, he has a passer rating of 80. When he's tied, he has a passer rating of 88. And the shocking one is when playing with a lead, so he's winning in the fourth quarter, he has a passer rating of 60. And this past season, in the fourth quarter, when it matters most, he is probably, technically, statistically, the worst quarterback in the NFL. Completion percentage, dead last in the fourth quarter. Passing yards in the fourth quarter, dead last. Turnovers, he has the most. And also passer rating, dead last. He's a great YouTube highlight. Incredibly athletic. Can run the ball like only a very, very few amount of quarterbacks in the NFL can. But when it matters most, and because this is a quarterback-driven league, when it's time to throw the ball, Justin Fields has a very, very difficult time doing that. He is inaccurate. He's got a number one receiver that everybody thinks is criminally underrated in DJ Moore, and it didn't really do much. Yes, they were a little bit better because they drafted an offensive lineman, and it did look a little bit better. They ended up winning 7 games this season, But everybody knows. The GM knows. The owner knows. Even Justin Fields knows. Not good enough. So they're going to move on from Justin Fields. He's accepted that for the past 2 years because this has been speculation over the past 2 seasons on whether or not they're going to stick with Justin Fields. What I find kind of stupid is the GM, Ryan Poles, said that they wanted to do right by Justin Fields and understands, quote, no one wants to live in the gray area. Well, I hate to break it to you, you still haven't come out and said we're done with Justin Fields. He doesn't even know what his job security looks like. There's a lot of question marks still. So if you understand that no one wants to live in a gray area, openly say we're going to draft a quarterback. Because it doesn't matter now. Everybody's speculating that you are anyway. You have the number 1 pick. It doesn't look like you're going to move off the number 1 pick anytime soon. So if you're thinking about drafting Caleb Williams, which is probably going to happen, you're going to meet with him after his pro day, then start openly, actively shopping him. Find out what's going on. Start making calls. Instead of receiving calls to gauge interest on the very few teams that might be interested, start making the calls. The sooner you get off them, like you said, if you really understand that no one wants to live in the gray area, don't let there be a gray area. So when it comes to the value of him, I think a 3rd-round pick is fine. He's shown that he can make some plays. He's incredibly athletic. He's incredibly mobile. I'd say I still stick with a 3rd-round pick. I don't think that's absolutely outrageous like some people were saying that it was such a horrible take to call him a 3rd-round pick because he hasn't done anything. He has the most fumbles since he entered the league. That's not good. He has 40 touchdowns to 30 picks in his career, 6,000 yards over 3 seasons. And you're telling me this guy's worth a 1st-round pick? Or now some people are wising up and saying, okay, well, maybe a 2nd-round pick. And NFL executives are saying low 2nd or high 3rd. That makes sense for a guy that has shown a little bit of promise. He's shown some growth, but overall, he's not a top 15 quarterback in the league. There are a lot of quarterbacks that I think a lot of teams would take, including rookie ones, over Justin Fields. Now, some QB desperate teams may look towards Justin Fields and say, well, what do we need? We could use a mobile quarterback, an athletic quarterback that can make some plays. But if we're talking about a reliable quarterback when the moments matter the most and you need him to make a play, we saw at the end of the Packer game. That was a brutal watch. Offense couldn't go anywhere against one of the worst defenses at the time, an incredibly underwhelming defense the Green Bay Packers had, and Justin Fields couldn't do anything. I actually was a Justin Fields fan until towards the end of the season where I'm like, it's not looking good. It really isn't looking good. Now, maybe it's the Bears. Maybe it could be the Bears because the Bears have had 28 quarterbacks since the year 2000 and have had, I think, 6 or 7 coaches since 2000 as well. It could very well be the Bears. The Bears have never had a 4,000-yard passer. They've never gotten quarterback right. And if Caleb Williams is nervous about being a Chicago Bear for that reason, because they never develop quarterbacks correctly, I would say that's okay. Do I love it? No. Because if I'm considered a generational talent and someone that is, a once-in-a-lifetime type of quarterback, a type of prospect, like people are calling Caleb Williams, then I should be motivated to change the narrative surrounding Chicago. Justin Fields also said that he doesn't like the weather in Chicago. I guess I could put that under he can't handle adversity very well. When things don't work out so great, there are very, very few quarterbacks that can make the difference. We already saw C.J. Stroud, his first season. He could overcome adversity. 42 seconds, takes him down the length of the field, and scores a touchdown to win the game. We've seen him fight through adversity. Justin Fields, he might not be able to do that. However, will we see him in a system that fits him more? I think the Steelers could be a good situation like that with Arthur Smith as their OC. You implement some run schemes for him. Well, lo and behold, he could be the starter for the Steelers, and I think they can go back to win 10 games. Do I think they go out and make the Super Bowl with Justin Fields? Not at all, especially in the difficult AFC. But I think if we're talking about Justin Fields' future, and you do have to pay him about $25 million if you pick up his 5th-year option, I don't think his market is that big. And supposedly at this current moment, his market is not that big. So if we're talking about teams that should be interested in Justin Fields as a starting quarterback, where do you think that he fits into the most? If there was one team.
I agree with you, Pittsburgh. Yeah. The reason I agree with that, 2 reasons actually. I think that he's an Ohio State player who played very well in Ohio State. Cleveland, Ohio is home. So I think, Pittsburgh Pittsburgh is in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I messed that up. I apologize. So but it's not that far away. And I think that Pittsburgh has a good coach, and Mike Tomlin might be able to get a better production out of Justin Fields. And I do think that maybe they could change their offense around to be more like the Ravens' offense, because they have two good running backs, right? And Justin Fields is a very good runner. He could dink and dunk and run.
Yeah.
I think they could hand it off. They could do the play action because they have Harris and they have Warren, and those guys are very capable running backs. They have very good wide receivers too. I think those guys they might not like the dink and dunk so well, especially Pickens. He likes the long pass, but I agree with you. I think Pittsburgh is the best landing place, and if they play the cards right, they can probably get him for not much, because the Bears blew it by telegraphing they want to get off Justin Fields.
And if I'm the Steelers, I'm looking for a quarterback. I know they're trying to rebuild Kenny Pickett with Arthur Smith, but let's be real. What Kenny Pickett has done is something no other quarterback since the 1970 merger has done. Kenny Pickett has the lowest touchdown percentage out of 315 quarterbacks that have 500 or more pass attempts in the NFL. It's sub 2%.
Wow.
The lowest touchdown
that.
percentage since the merger with 500-plus pass attempts. He is statistically the worst touchdown thrower in NFL history.
Yeah.
He does not throw touchdowns very often, if at all.
That's tough if you're the quarterback.
I don't think Arthur Smith, because we just saw what Arthur Smith did with Desmond Ridder.
Not much.
I'm telling you right now, Kenny Pickett's not going to go from complete bust to this guy's a Pro Bowler. This guy could make the playoffs. This guy could win a playoff game. It's not going to happen. But I think regardless, the Steelers are in a difficult situation because Mike Tomlin keeps winning seasons and having winning season after winning season. They never have high draft picks. They're never going to go out and get a top-tier, rookie quarterback unless one falls into their arms, or they get lucky with maybe a Bo Nix all of a sudden comes alive if they decide to pick him at number 20. Or if J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix fall to 20 and they pick him at that spot. But truthfully, because they have winning season after winning season, they're never in a position to get a top-tier prospect to flip their quarterback culture around. That's just the case of it. And that's, the unfortunate reality that the Steelers have themselves in. Mike Tomlin does just enough to not be god-awful. And I will give him credit. Even with this anemic offense with Matt Canada as their OC for a majority of the season, they still found a way to somehow win 10 games with Mason Rudolph, Mitch Trubisky, and Kenny Pickett as their starting quarterbacks. That is impressive.
Yeah, so you'd think if they could upgrade even a little bit, they should be in pretty good shape.
Oh, I don't think Justin Fields is an upgrade. I really don't. I just think
over Kenny Pickett?
I think they're going to find the same record next season if they choose to start Justin Fields.
That may be true.
Once again,
but I
it's
do
like
think
Bailey Zappi. It'll look a little bit better.
Yeah, well,
the wins might be a little bit easier instead of grueling defensive matchups. Yeah. They may have one or two blowout wins against bad teams. But do I think they're going to here win 13 games and compete for the AFC? Not at all.
Well, I think Justin Fields is a better athlete than Kenny Pickett.
1,000%.
Yeah.
I would give him top 5 best athlete in the NFL right now.
The thought is maybe
3.
the Bears' brain trust was the problem for Justin Fields. You mentioned that. And Mike Tomlin might be able to get more production out of him and turn him into what others thought was going to be the MVP as recently as the beginning of last year.
Well, he was an MVP favorite. It's just that he was
he was in the discussion.
He was the highest.
He was in the discussion.
Well, no, he was plus 2,000 odds. But the reason why he was even in that sort of stratosphere is because he had the most first place bets at plus 2,000 odds, more than Herbert, Mahomes, and Allen, I believe, combined.
Yeah.
They were just trying to bank on the plus 2,000 odds there, but I don't think he was ever seriously in MVP talks. But maybe in a better situation, Justin Fields might look a little bit better. But I think in reality, depending on how Trevor Lawrence's career ends up, this might be one of the most underwhelming draft classes when it comes to quarterbacks, maybe ever, where we have Mac Jones, who could be out of a job, Justin Fields, who could be out of a job, Trey Lance, who's already been moved on from. Then you have, Trevor Lawrence, who has shown promise, won a playoff game. He's looked pretty good. He had a down year this year, but this is one of probably the most underwhelming. And then Zach Wilson is just he's a complete bust. like Trey Lance, but Zach Wilson actually played some NFL games, and we actually saw that he's a bust. But I think overall, this might be the 2021 QB draft class, may be the worst. If we're talking about potential and then actually performance, the drop-off is absolutely insane. Because Trey Lance is supposed to be this, very, very high ceiling because of he's 6'4", 220, incredibly athletic. He played 4 games and looked horrible in all 4 of them. Then you have Justin Fields, who they believe was picked 9th. Supposed to be a great Ohio State guy, deep ball, beautiful accuracy. Not great. Could be this Chicago system. Could be the fact that they've had 28 quarterbacks in 24 years. That's
amazing.
Then you had Mac Jones, who the 49ers are debating about picking him at number 3. Goes 15th to the Patriots, has a great rookie year, bad development around him, bad coaching leads to he's probably out of a job. Zach Wilson, love a great deep ball at BYU. Set in stone. I feel like I heard it from day one he was going to the Jets. Bust. Complete bust.
Yeah.
And then Trevor Lawrence, who's the best quarterback hands down out of all of those, last season showed a little bit of regression.
It's been spotty.
Has been spotty. So I'm not surprised at all. I'm not surprised whatsoever. Justin Fields' market is drier than what people are thinking. Because when you talk about overall success, if you're talking about the future quarterback, your future franchise quarterback, he's got to show production. He's got to show success. And so far, he's had a couple really good runs and a couple cool YouTube highlights. Outside of that, overall production, not great. Not great. So, most likely, if we're not playing with our hearts rather than our heads, if we're talking about our mock drafts, Caleb Williams is going 1 to the Chicago Bears. I think that's set in stone now. Let's get into another topic here. So we've talked about Daniel Jones and the New York Giants situation several times on the show. And you've been back and forth on Daniel Jones and who to blame for last season, and then how some argued that he was a top 10 quarterback entering this season. And I was like, no, y'all are crazy. And now, lo and behold, it looks like from Rich Eisen, the rumor he heard at the Combine was the Giants are absolutely done with Daniel Jones and have buyer's remorse. Remember, they signed Daniel Jones to a 4-year, $160 million contract at $82 million guaranteed. And last season, he went 2-6 and looked absolutely horrible. 2 touchdowns, 6 picks, getting sacked a bunch of times. Did have one of the highest pressure to sack ratio or percentages in the NFL. So hard time evading sacks.
Can't stay healthy.
And also their GM, Joe Shane, has said openly how he still believes in Daniel Jones, but now, I guess, behind closed doors, smartly, they're looking to get off him. They currently have the 6th pick in the draft. They have an opportunity to get either a top-tier wide receiver, a top-tier offensive lineman, or I would say a tier 1B quarterback, depending on how you think of Penix and Bo Nix and J.J. McCarthy. I want to know, first off, do you think the Giants should move off of Daniel Jones? And currently, we haven't made our mock drafts yet. Who do you think would be the best fit for the Giants at pick number 6? Offensive lineman, quarterback, or receiver? Or anyone else you're thinking of, but those are the top 3.
Well, I'm not sure. I think Rich Eisen's making some of it's a hype for the story. I think the Giants are going to be stuck with Daniel Jones for next year, just based on the way things are playing out in terms of his contract and what they'll have available to them. I mean, they're not going to trade for another quarterback right now. Can they draft a 1B at number 6? Sure, they could take one of the numbers that you've been rattling off there, Bo Nix or Michael Penix, J.J. McCarthy. He'd probably be there at number 6. So, yeah, they could do that. And maybe they should because I don't think that if Daniel Jones doesn't have a huge bounce-back year, then he's out. He's gone. They have $35 million guaranteed that they got to pay him, and then they can cut their losses and say goodbye to him. So I think maybe it's a possibility they will draft a quarterback at number 6. But I do think Daniel Jones will be the starter in 2024, and I hope that the Giants find a way to improve their offensive line a little bit because I do feel for the guy. He got just slaughtered out there. I mean, it was hard to watch.
Yeah.
How many times he got sacked? I mean, they really beat up on him. So it wasn't all his fault. I do think the Giants made a strategic mistake when they signed him to the 4-year, $160 million contract. They should have franchise tagged him and given the contract to Saquon Barkley, who really is their best player and has proven it the last couple of years. So, and he's been able to stay healthy too. So I think Barkley would have been the better choice. And I've heard, like this afternoon, the Giants came out and said, with the salary cap being changed the way it is this year, that it's not a foregone conclusion that they won't give Saquon Barkley the franchise tag. They might still do that. And Barkley said that he wants to remain a Giant for the rest of his career, but I think he'll be upset if they franchise tag him. So I think the Giants are in kind of a little bit of a mess here.
Well, yeah, no, and this is the weird thing. I don't feel like they've yet hit the full reset button, because what they're trying to do is bring in young offensive talent, try to rebuild an offensive line, keeping a bad quarterback, keeping a star running back with no real full reset. Their defense is decent. I would say it's pretty good. But their offense has always been just trying to duct tape and Band-Aid broken pieces and not hitting the full reset button yet. They went right from Eli Manning into Daniel Jones. And people say, Daniel Jones sacked all the time. He can't evade a sack. He was second this season in pressure to sack ratio. He can't evade any sack. He's a mobile quarterback who's not great in the pocket. His pocket awareness is very, very lackluster. It's not great. And where we saw a veteran quarterback step into the Giants offense, and Tommy DeVito had, some shocking wins here and there. But if we're talking about a veteran quarterback in Tyrod Taylor, which I said from the beginning could run this offense better than DeVito and Daniel Jones, and some people argued against me saying, what do you mean? Tommy DeVito, Tyrod Taylor's not that great of a quarterback. That might be the case, but within this offense, he executed this offense significantly better than both Daniel Jones and Tommy DeVito. But I said this from the beginning. It made no sense, and when they were debating on whether or not to franchise tag Daniel Jones or franchise tag Saquon and give Daniel Jones the big contract, I don't understand why they didn't sign Saquon. Because we saw one efficient season from Daniel Jones. It wasn't great. It was just better than, bottom of the barrel. It was like a fourth of the barrel up, if you even want to give him that. It wasn't absolutely god-awful. It looked a little bit better. He kept the ball out of harm's way by dinking and dunking, and he led him to one playoff win. You can't argue that. Those are the facts. But because you already got rid of his fifth-year option, and because there's something called the franchise tag, and it exists, one of the reasons would be if a player has one really good season at the end of their rookie deal, or just at the end of a contract, you could franchise them. Well, lo and behold, you should have used it. Because Saquon, when Daniel Jones was out there, Saquon made Daniel Jones a better quarterback. 10% higher completion percentage, higher, 50 more passing yards per game. Touchdown-interception ratio was much better when they could run the ball effectively. But when it was up to Daniel Jones, drop it back and throwing, at least in this season, it was drop it back, throwing, trying to evade a sack and goes down, or dropping back, looking, interception. And everyone remembers against the Seattle Seahawks, he threw his, I think it was, Devon Witherspoon. He sent it all the way. He housed it basically the length of the field. And then we saw Brian Daboll screaming at Daniel Jones in that game. Yeah, I don't think Brian Daboll even likes his starting quarterback. He was just stuck with him. And he did a really good job his rookie year. But with Evan Neal being horrible and the offensive line not great. And then Daniel Jones gets hurt. He's had his reoccurring neck issues and then tearing your ACL. And on top of that, just not being a good quarterback really at all. He's shown moments, and it's an unfortunate situation. Maybe just like Justin Fields in a better situation, he might look a little bit better. But overall, Daniel Jones is not a great quarterback. So I wouldn't have given him $160 million over 4 years. I still can't believe they signed him to that.
Would you have franchise tagged him?
I would have franchise tagged him because
and
he's
given a contract to Saquon Barkley, which you could have had for $35 million for 3 years or something like that. $40 million for 3 years. Yeah. You probably could have done that.
Because
that would have been a much better deal.
All we saw was one. I can't call it a good year. We saw one okay year with Daniel Jones compared to just terrible performance after terrible performance after terrible performance. We saw one okay year, and they thought, okay, he's worth $40 million a year. And now they're like, well, yeah, he had 2 touchdowns, 6 picks, looked terrible, but we're stuck with him with a whole nother season because if we decide to get off of Daniel Jones this season, we have to incur a massive dead cap. If let's say we release him after June 1st, it's a $59 million dead cap hit for this season, which I think that would surpass Russell Wilson's biggest cap hit. So.
Well, he's got $84 million.
Well, I'm talking about for one season.
One season is $53 million for the second year.
Right. So, and then Daniel Jones would surpass that with $59 million. He would
That's
take
amazing.
that number 1 spot.
Wow.
So
that really hurts. That really hurts a team when that happens, right? When you make a bet like that, a big bet, and then it doesn't pan out, and you suffer for it. I mean, look at the Broncos. They'll suffer. They won't do that well in next year, I don't think.
Oh, absolutely not. No.
Stidham as their quarterback, you know. Maybe the Broncos will go for Jameis Winston.
I was thinking Broncos, yeah. And I heard a couple arguments saying, well, he had 14 touchdowns, 3 picks when he was with Sean Payton in New Orleans. Could be interesting, and that might be a location that Jameis Winston might be enthralled to go to because he had one of his best seasons before he ended up getting hurt with Sean Payton. Maybe Sean Payton's interested in reuniting with him because he did have some success with Jameis Winston as his quarterback.
You know what I'm thinking as we've been talking about all these quarterbacks, and there's a lot of quarterbacks around.
Yeah.
Right? There's good quarterbacks in the draft, and there's a lot of quarterbacks. I mean, you have Tyrod Taylor, too. Where's he going to land?
He's going to be a backup somewhere.
Yeah, but where? I don't know where. I mean, there's a lot of it's turning out now that some pretty decent quarterbacks will wind up being backups.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, Justin Fields might wind up being a backup quarterback.
And I think if he does, I would go to I would probably go to the Jets. Although media would crush him. So really, I have Justin Fields, if he were not to be a starter at one of like the 4 destinations that are, open right now, I have no idea where he goes.
Yeah. I think the Giants are going to have a tough season this year.
Absolutely.
I don't think it's going to be that good, particularly if they don't find a way to keep Barkley on the team.
Right.
What are they going to do? I mean, they'll wind up bringing in some journeyman running back.
Or you
won't
could,
be
you
anywhere
could
near.
draft someone like Blake Cole,
but
maybe in a 3rd round, or if they trade into the 2nd round, I would say that they may jump a little bit too early
to get him. Yeah.
The Giants supposedly are interested also in Blake Corum and drafting him. But if you don't have Blake Corum and you don't have Saquon, there's really not much. You could try to go out and get Josh Jacobs, but if you didn't pay Saquon, why pay Josh Jacobs? Same with Derrick Henry. If you're not willing to pay some of these running backs, you're going to go out and pay for another one? It doesn't make a lot of sense.
I think Saquon Barkley would get a good offer if he wasn't franchise tagged by the Giants.
Well, he wasn't. No, today he came out as not going to be franchise tagged.
No, they said that. No, I just read before I came down that the GM for the Giants said it's not a foregone conclusion.
Right.
We might still franchise tag him.
Well, they can't because today was the deadline. They didn't.
Oh, really?
Tag
They didn't do it.
No.
Oh, I didn't know today was the deadline.
Yeah, it happened in 3.5 hours ago.
Oh, wow.
There are really no running backs got franchise tagged.
And the Giants are toast in 24. That's my prediction.
I mean, they draft 6. There is a chance if the Patriots get a veteran quarterback that they will let the Giants trade up into number 3 and get a decent amount.
Who would the Patriots get for a veteran quarterback?
Russell Wilson? You argued Russell Wilson like an hour ago.
Well, at $1.2 million, sure. Yeah.
Well, that's what I mean. You and then my major concern would be as soon as you give up pick 3, Marvin Harrison goes number 4 to the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah.
Because that's going to happen.
I think the Patriots should give up that draft pick. Even if they don't get a quarterback, they should go for Harrison. Right? I mean, Russell Wilson is if you could bring him in after you drafted a quarterback as a guy to teach and to be a mentor or something like that, then maybe. But I don't see him using your draft pick and winding up with him. That to me, that's unless you trade down for like 3 picks, something like that. In late in the first round and in the 2nd and 3rd round. maybe. I don't know.
Well, you might not believe Rich Eisen. I do. I trust because he was at the combine, or he was hearing these rumors. I believe Rich Eisen because if we take your route and say, well, it's just media hype, then the Giants are, no offense to anyone who's a Giants fan or the Giants, they're idiots. If they're going to stick with a bad quarterback who they're overpaying, now they need to stick with him at least for this season. But if they believe he is the true starting quarterback for the future with the New York Giants moving forward, they're screwed. It doesn't matter who you bring in because you have so many holes on the offense. You need basically a whole new offensive line. You could keep Andrew Thomas there, and then you'll keep your center. But Evan Neal is terrible. Apparently, Joe Shane still believes in him. You need another you need a true wide receiver. Supposedly, Darren Waller, their tight end, is considering retirement. You might be screwed over at tight end again. The Giants have never
He can't stay healthy anyway.
Like, for instance, we've seen teams hit the full reset button. The Broncos tried to do that when they were playing like Drew Lock at quarterback, and they had Joe Flacco in at quarterback. They tried to hit the reset button on offense, and because of that, you got Jerry Jeudy, and you ended up with Russell Wilson being able to pay for him. Now, you overpaid for him, and it was the worst trade in NFL history probably, but you were able to get all these assets because you hit the reset button. There were teams that did hit the reset button or drafted well enough that they're in a position to never hit the full reset button. Like, for instance, because you had pieces in place for long term. Like, for instance, we went Joe Flacco right into Lamar Jackson, and it worked beautifully because Lamar was a hit. An absolute hit. We've seen, people are not going to agree with this fully, we've seen the 49ers go from Jimmy G in NFC Championship games and Super Bowl appearances right into Brock Purdy. NFC Championship game appearance, Super Bowl appearance. We've seen it work. Now, that's not saying that Brock Purdy has a complete drop-off. But we've
generally, when it works, the team has a lot of other pieces around the quarterback.
Exactly.
Right? Good pieces.
The Giants went from Eli Manning and a bad offense with OBJ out the door into Daniel Jones with no offense really, whatever, and then you had Saquon Barkley as your only real key piece of the offense. Offensive line's been a mess. Surrounding weapons have been a mess. Defense has been okay. Dexter Lawrence, I like. Xavier McKinney, who's gone as a free agent right now, I liked him. Julian Love had a good season 2 seasons ago. You had a couple pieces that were great. There's too many moving parts, and if you're sticking with a bad quarterback, you're setting yourself up for failure. You went 6-11 this season, and that's thanks to Tommy DeVito shocking the world a couple times, and they actually had an opportunity to be 7-10 if Tyrod Taylor maybe gets put in the Eagles game a little bit sooner. He was one throw away from potentially tying the game up and potentially beating the Eagles.
Yeah.
But Tyrod Taylor looked great. He was also one missed pass interference call against the Buffalo Bills to beat them. So Daniel Jones in that situation wouldn't even be close. Wouldn't even be close to beating either of those teams. And yet he is still presumably out in the public your number one quarterback.
I'll be interested to see where Tyrod Taylor lands. But he has a trouble of staying healthy.
Correct.
My God, he cannot stay healthy.
That is true.
He puts himself in harm's way too often. He dives for the first down and gets creamed, and that knocked him out of for about 5 or 6 weeks. And he just has a history of being hurt all the time. So it's unfortunate for him because he is quite talented. Now he's getting old.
Right.
Yeah.
So there we go. Daniel Jones, supposedly according to Rich Eisen, the Giants are absolutely done with them. I do want to talk about this, though, because I know you haven't kept up fully with the free agency. Patriots news, Xavier McKinney got franchise tagged. Mike Owenu could be, or he will be a free agent. We'll see if the Patriots want to re-sign him in free agency. But Kyle Duggar did get franchise tagged.
Kyle Duggar?
I don't know if I said Xavier McKinney. If I did, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Kyle Duggar did get franchise tagged.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. I like Kyle Duggar.
Yeah. So now the question is, what piece will you bring in? Kendrick Bourne, you have Owenu, you have a lot of pieces out there. I don't
know what the Patriots are going to look like next year. It's going to be really interesting. All new coaching staff, a lot of players moving off the team. It'll be interesting to see and who they draft. And we'll see what 5 years from now what they say about the Patriots drafting and how it was compared to our good friend Bill Belichick.
Our good friend? I don't know about that. Also, we did this occasionally last season just for, live predictions on the show. Hawks at Knicks starts in about 10 minutes from now. Who will you take? Brunson's not playing in this game. Hawks at Knicks.
How badly is Brunson hurt?
Everything looks clean, but he will be out for tonight's game. So who you got? Hawks at Knicks.
With Brunson out, it's going to be tougher, but the Hawks aren't very good this year, so I'm picking the Knicks.
You're picking the Knicks? And then the big one, Celtics at Cavs, also starts at about 10 minutes from now. Who you got in this one?
I got the Celtics. They've been blowing everybody out recently.
I agree with you. I'll take the Celtics and I'll take the Knicks as well to win. But yeah, that does wrap up today's episode of the Harvey Hour. This does wrap up the 200th episode of the Harvey Hour. We thank you for your constant support. If this is your first stream that you watched, or if you're watching the first clip that you've ever watched, we appreciate it. If you hate our takes, we also appreciate you as well for at least listening to how bad our takes could be. It's nearing the draft as the days progress. We got about the correct amount of time is 51 days, 23 minutes, and 6 seconds, So the draft is approaching. Combine pro days. Combine's basically over. The pro days now are coming up very, very soon, so there'll be more to look at. J.J. McCarthy reportedly is pushing to jump Jaden Daniels in the draft in the draft order.
I don't believe
I heard that today as well. There's some crazy stuff going on, crazy rumors as well. But yeah, we'll keep you on top of this. Friday should be a good show. We're talking more football. We'll talk some basketball. But for today's episode of the Harvey Hour, we thank you for watching. My name's Nathan Harvey. That's Stephen Harvey. We have been your co-host of the Harvey Hour. Catch us Friday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube.
Good night, Grandpa.
Using Wi-Fi without NordVPN could mean sharing your private stuff with more people than you think. Stay safe on public Wi-Fi. Get NordVPN's special offer and encrypt your internet connection. NordVPN. Online security starts with a click.